Nobody likes to experience the jeans waist gap. And what I mean by the jeans waist gap is nobody likes to have a great fitting pair of jeans everywhere except the waist. I mean, the world's love affair with jeans rages hot, and we just want our jeans to fit well everywhere, including the waist. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to fit the waist perfectly on this pair of jeans, this jean skirt, and this pair of cutoff jeans. I'm going to show you on all three because there are 3 ways to do it, and you're going to like one or more of them, I promise. Now, for best results, you're going to need a machine that can go through all the thickness of these denim seams. And ideally, at least for the top thread, do have some thicker jeans thread. If you can, you don't have to. Now, let's get started. Here's the thing, you always want to take in a jeans waist at the back seam here. We're going to take out a nice slender pie piece. You don't really want to do it at the sides. Why? Because you run into hardware all too often. 3 ways I'm going to show you how to do this back seam are flat fell method, mock flat fell, and truly fake flat fell. What do I mean by flat fell? Well, a flat fell seam is one that looks essentially the same on the outside as it does on the inside. Somehow they've made the fabric lock together into a seam. And I'm going to show you how to do a true flat fell like this. Then I'm going to show you how to do a mock flat fell. And then we're going to do, like I said, the really fake flat fell. And all will look the same on the outside, like this, just different on the underside. First things first, you need to figure out how much is going to come off the waist. Get your subject in the pair of jeans, and if that's you, get help for yourself, and find out how much excess there is by pinching into the waist, just how much is gapping there, however much it is. Then take your ruler and measure how much the gap is. Just measure on one side and then double it. And then you'll have your measurement. Usually all you have to do is measure in by pinching here. You usually don't have to measure all the way down because you're going to take out a natural pie piece. But sometimes you do have to kind of pinch in further down the rear area until you figure out where it stops, and everything then fits well. Sometimes you're just going to be taking out a small pie piece. A lot of the time you're going to be taking out a substantial pie piece. So depending on how much your person can tolerate being pinched, figure out how much needs to come out and write it down. Having figured out how much to take off the waist, it's time to measure it off. But first, fair warning, if the pair of pants is really too large, say 3 inches or more that needs to come off, maybe don't do this project. It's probably too much because it's going to draw these pockets too close together, and if the pockets get too close together, it looks funny. For our purposes, we're going to take 2 inches off this waist. That means 1 inch on this side of the belt loop and 1 inch on the other side. See these 2 first marks? From there, I'm going to draw my pie piece. And in this event, I'm going to draw it all the way down, almost to the crotch. I'm going to do that on the other side now. Next, I drew in 3/8 inch seam allowances on the inner aspect of that triangle. Here's what it looks like from this angle. Now for the unavoidable task of a lot of ripping out. First, the belt loop comes off, and I find it hard to do it with just a seam ripper. A razor blade works really great for me. It's okay if you nick the fabric when you're working with the razor blade, because all this is coming out anyway. With that belt loop off, now I can find the very center where I'm going to end up cutting this waistband, because a seam is going to have to be made in the waistband. Following that, I want to release the waistband. Well, not quite as far as the next belt loops, but pretty far out, because we're going to need room to move here. So take that seam ripper and get it going. I'm also going to need to release this top stitching. Cut that very center line where the belt loop was, either through all thicknesses or one at a time, whichever you can manage. There it is. Up to this point, you do all the same things we just did, whether you're doing flat fell, mock flat fell, or fake flat fell. On this pair of jeans, we're going to actually do the very fake flat fell first. That's because we have really a lot of thickness here. Not only do we have the jeans thickness to contend with, but they have lined these jeans with this plaid. So I imagine the manufacturer opted for the fake, and this will become more clear as we go along, because otherwise it was just going to be too thick to do the flat fell. Well, lucky me, it's hard to see, but I need to get out these two lines of stitching all the way down to the almost crotch from the inside. This is a chain stitch, much like I demonstrated at the waistband, and now I'm going to attempt to do it here. It's hard to see, but I'm going to attempt to get a chain stitch started for you so you can see how that works. If it doesn't work well here, in the other methods, I'll be able to demonstrate it for you. It wasn't giving me a break ripping from the inside, so I'll just do it from the outside. Okay, that was an enormous amount of ripping. And I'm going to reveal to you the secret of the truly fake flat fell right now. All it is a straight seam that has been serged or zigzagged and then pressed to the side and top stitched. That's all it is. And that's all we're going to do on this pair of pants. I'm now going to cut along those seam allowance lines. Just like that, I'm ready to sew now a regular seam by turning this wrong side out. Clear down to the crotch here. I'll top stitch, get the waistband back on. Since you guys know how to sew, I'm not going to actually show you the sewing part except when it comes to the top stitching. So I've got it turned wrong side out. I'm just going to match up my seams here, pin it carefully, and run it. This is a great bent pin project. I'm going to use a bunch of bent pins since they're going to get bent probably anyway from all the thickness, but I'm going to take extra care here now at the yoke to make sure that it matches. It's going to be a lot of thickness I'll be going over right there. Nailed it on that back seam, look, and then I stitched doubly for security. Checking, we see I got really lucky at the yoke. So here's a trick I want to share with you about keeping that yoke from shifting on you. As you approach the bump here, it kind of wants to shift many times. Pin on either side of the yoke really close up. Then put your presser foot down and your needle in the middle of that bump. That way it can't shift on you. And then go forward from there, and then come back later and maybe turn it around and go away from it towards the top, or whatever it takes to keep this yoke from shifting. You'll be much happier. If you can't do it, of course, you just leave it if it doesn't matter to you. But if you want that perfection, that's my best advice. Using a size 18 to 20 needle. Yes, a big needle. A lot of needles are labeled jeans needles or perhaps a leather needle. Now I've gone ahead and zigzagged that seam. No way was I going to put my tabletop non-industrial serger through that. I want to go to the front now and top stitch my double seam, don't I? Reminded of which way to have the seam going, which is going to be to my left from the top. All right, over to the machine and I'll show you top stitching. What do you think? Not too bad. It was a struggle. I did some ripping out while I got the hang of the drag of the fabric under the presser foot because it's so thick, and I did end up avoiding the yoke bump altogether. I started from just below the yoke bump, zipped down, then turned it around and went the other way to get up to the top. That's what it took. I did avoid back stitching right here at the yoke, and I just tied a knot on the underside, but of course did back stitch at the top and the bottom down there. It was hard to make the stitches even because of the drag of the fabric, but it looks pretty good, and I'll have to say this is the first time I could never get over a yoke bump. I pride myself in being able to do it. Let's see if in the other methods I'll be able to do it. Ready to get that waistband back on? I know I am. I'll show you how. Make sure all the stitching is out of the waistband. Spread it fully out. Place right sides together. Now I'm going to pin all that in place. And you're pinning in deeply, 1 inch, because remember we need to take in 2 inches. And I have just enough room to move here. That's why we ripped back almost to the next belt loops there, and I might have to rip a little more in order to get in here. It's so tight. Once that 1 inch seam is sewn, check it for fit. That seems like that will be right. Now I'll trim, having checked it. Then I'll check it again, just in case it's a little loose. I'll take it in a little more. Let's find out. That should be good. Now don't worry if the seam is a little askew of the double line of stitching, because you're still going to be putting a belt loop over this, which will hide anything that's a little irregular. Time now for me to zip across here. But first I'm going to attempt to get this seam open. Sometimes I haven't been able to in the past, and then I just let it all be over to the side. But if you can get it open and flat, now sandwich the jeans right in there. Pin it if you can. I'm probably not going to pin it. I'm probably just going to hold on to it for dear life and zip across. Okay, so I wrestled that waistband on and replaced the top stitching here at the top. Looks like I might have gone a little deep here on the underside, but it's all caught in. That's all I care about. Now, we're going to put the belt loop on. The belt loop will be the last final challenge, and it will be. Why? Because now it's doubly thick from what it was originally to get this back on. So I'm going to be using my hand wheel probably a great deal to get across here. I only need to get across a few stitches top and bottom, so I'll probably use my strategy of stabbing in the middle here with the needle going forward and then maybe turning it around and going the other way and back again. Same for the bottom here. I'll do my ever-loving best to get this lined up with the stitching, the double stitching below it. Here goes. And there it is, my friends. We've got the belt loop on. What I tended to do was stitch below the original stitching because that was going to make it even thicker if I tried to pound through the stitching of the belt loop. So since the colors are a little different, you can see how I did that. And now it's on there, and we are finished with the truly fake flat fell. Let's move on to the other techniques, and this will move along much more swiftly. Okay, I'm excited to move on to the next method with this ragtag pair of cutoffs that looks pretty rough actually in the crotch, and I would never go so far as to fix that, but it's sure going to serve our purposes for taking in the back seam. I'm going to get back with you in a minute after I have done the initial steps of getting this belt loop off, drawing my pie pieces, because we're going to take the 2 inches out again, and then go from there on the mock flat fell method and the flat fell method. Here it is, all chalked and waistband released and sliced down the center. Now it was at this point before that I started to cut along the seam allowance lines. This time I'm going to take apart the 2 stitching lines from the wrong side because I want to demonstrate that really cool chain stitch release if I get lucky and get it started right. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you the true nature of the flat fell, the true flat fell, and the mock flat fell. So now I just got nice and lucky and released that thread just right. And yes, I'm going to release it all the way down to the crotch. And that releases the top side very nicely too. There is a little bit of a learning curve to getting this started, so forgive yourself if it takes a little bit, and then just rip out the normal way if you can't get the chain stitch to release. So here's the nature of a true flat fell seam. The seam allowance is pressed forward on one side, and the seam allowance is pressed under on the other side. And then they end up being locked into each other, like so, and then stitched down. Or maybe this simple demonstration with paper will help. I have 2 sticky papers and I fold it up towards me, about 3/8 inch. Now I'm going to flip one of them over, hold them profile to you, and simply lock them in together. It's just 2 pieces of fabric locked in together and then top stitched. I hope that helps. Now that you're clear on what flat fell is, the folding of these in and locking them in together, I'm going to slide right into what mock flat fell is. So here's the thing about mock flat fell that I really like, and this is a term I've coined myself. Instead of interlocking these 2 pieces, which can be cumbersome when you're new at this and even for a long time to come, I simply place the turned under piece on top of the turned upward piece, just making sure that I have placed the top piece past the raw edge of the bottom and I just stitch from here. And it looks the same on both sides. Or using our trusty pieces of paper, we simply lay this one on top of that one. Just lay them right on top. And stitch them down, watching out for the raw edge. Okay? I'm going to pull apart my pie wedge now and cut my seam allowances. This side gets pressed up, this side gets pressed under. And there it is, pressed under, pressed upward. Let's see if I can get a real nice flat fell result. I'm going to start pinning. Admittedly, pinning for flat fell is not easy. That's why I'll often opt for the mock flat fell, but I'm going to go for it. And now, will she or won't she make the bump this time? I hope so. I don't guarantee that I'll be able to make the underside look as good as the top side. That's not my objective like the manufacturers are able to. I just want to demonstrate to you flat fell and make it look as good as possible from the front. Okay, I'm going to say I nailed it pretty good. The top part here, I would kind of redo this part if I were going to. I'm not going to, but if I were doing this for an actual client, I would redo this line now below the hump that I made. Yes, I did. Look. I did pretty good underneath that, all the way down to the crotch, and then you see how you finally come out to the original stitch line right when you get to the crotch. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the underside bravely. Not so great, and that's why I really kind of despise doing the flat fell myself and often resort to the mock flat fell. It just turns out better. It's almost impossible to do it at the hump here. I don't know how the manufacturers do it. They just do. And I want to hear from you who can pull this off more successfully than I. I'd really love to hear about your success and the jolly time you had doing it. Okay, there it is. Okay, here we are at the skirt, and I really only have a couple things to say about it. I wish the cutoff jeans and the plaid line jeans had been as supple as this. This would be a real easy project. It's so manageable the way it feels. The jean skirt, what is it? It's fake flat fell. And I'm just going to say, you're probably going to do the best with fake flat fell. Mock flat fell would be next. True flat fell, it's the most challenging, as you saw. On a skirt, I would advise ripping all of the top stitching all the way down to the hem. This one has a little bit of a kick pleat. You maybe could get away with stopping here. That's so that the thread that you choose will be matching. You don't want to have what looks like a stopping and starting point at wherever your wedge ended, right? So that's my best advice on the skirt. Hey, you guys, go for it. You can do this. Refer to my older video that I'm going to put a link to below. And I'll also notate all the stop and start points for the different methods so that you can just hop right to them. And I just want to encourage all of you to try this, and those of you who do, hey, really good job.